My cousin Rachel showed up to my grandmother's 80th birthday party in a brand new Mercedes GLE, wearing a Chanel suit that probably cost more than my entire month's rent. She made sure everyone at the party knew that she had just closed a deal on a $5 million waterfront property in Malibu, pocketing a $300,000 commission. What she didn't know was that by the end of that evening, my grandmother would be handing me the keys to her $2 million beach house in Laguna Beach, and Rachel's perfect life would start crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. I'm Emma, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a freelance interior designer, which sounds fancier than it actually is. Most of my clients are young couples trying to make their first apartments look decent on a budget, or small business owners who need help picking paint colors for their offices. It's not glamorous work, and the income is unpredictable. Some months I make $4,000, other months I barely scrape together $1,500. I'm also a single mom to my 7-year-old daughter Lily. Her father left when she was 2, and I haven't heard from him since. Child support? That's a joke. I've learned to manage on my own. My cousin Rachel, on the other hand, seemed to have it all figured out. She was 3 years older than me, and she had built what everyone in the family called a successful career in real estate. She worked for one of those high-end agencies in Beverly Hills, the kind that only deals with properties starting at $2 million. Her Instagram was a constant stream of luxury open houses, champagne toasts with clients, and photos of her standing in front of mansions with that practiced smile of someone who knows exactly how impressive they look. Rachel had married Kevin 5 years ago, and he worked in tech. Together they lived in a beautiful house in Pasadena with a pool and a 3-car garage. Or at least that's what Rachel wanted everyone to believe. At family gatherings, she always made a point of mentioning their latest vacation to Positano or their new Tesla or the private school they were considering for their future children. She talked in brand names and dollar amounts, and she had a way of making every conversation feel like a competition. Growing up, Rachel and I used to be close. We spent summers together at our grandmother's beach house, building sandcastles and collecting shells. But somewhere along the way, after college, after Rachel landed her real estate job and I started my design business, things changed. She started looking at me differently. There was this condescending tone that crept into her voice whenever she asked about my work. At family dinners, Rachel would say things like, "Still doing that little hobby job, Emma? Or have you thought about getting a real career? You know, something stable?" She'd laugh like it was a joke, but her eyes told a different story. She was genuinely confused about why I hadn't followed a more traditional, more lucrative path. The fact that I was a single mom seemed to reinforce her belief that I had somehow failed at life. What Rachel didn't know, what she never bothered to ask about, was that I spent every Thursday evening with our grandmother. I had been doing this for 10 years, ever since I graduated from college. Every single week, without fail, I would drive the 45 minutes from my apartment in Long Beach to Grandma Helen's house in Laguna Beach. We would cook dinner together, usually her famous chicken pot pie or her Italian wedding soup. We would watch old movies, the black and white ones she loved. Sometimes we would just sit on her porch and watch the sunset over the ocean. Grandma Helen was 80 years old, but she was sharp as ever. She had been widowed for 15 years, and she lived alone in the beach house that she and my grandfather had bought back in the 1980s, before Laguna Beach became the expensive paradise it is today. The house was modest by current standards, a 3-bedroom cottage just 2 blocks from the beach, but it was worth close to $2 million now because of the location. My grandmother never complained about being alone, but I could tell she appreciated the company. She would tell me stories about her life, about how she and my grandfather had saved every penny to buy that house, about how they had raised their children there, about the neighborhood when it was still full of artists and surfers instead of tech millionaires and celebrities. Rachel, meanwhile, visited our grandmother maybe 3 times a year. She would show up for major holidays, stay for a few hours, take some photos for her Instagram, and then leave. I never said anything about it, but I noticed. And I knew that Grandma Helen noticed too. The birthday party was held at a restaurant in Newport Beach, a nice place with an ocean view that my aunt had reserved for the occasion. About 40 people showed up, mostly family and a few of my grandmother's oldest friends. I wore a simple navy dress that I had bought at Target 3 years ago. It was clean and appropriate, but definitely not designer. Lily was wearing a pink dress that was already a bit too small for her. But it was her favorite, so I let her wear it. Rachel arrived 30 minutes late, which was typical for her. She made an entrance, which was also typical. The Mercedes was parked right in front where everyone could see it. She was wearing the Chanel suit, black with gold buttons, paired with Louboutin heels. Her husband Kevin was in a Tom Ford suit. They looked like they had just stepped out of a luxury magazine. "Sorry we're late," Rachel announced loudly as she walked into the private dining room. "I was closing the Malibu deal. $5 million. It took longer than expected but worth it." She laughed and did a little shimmy with her shoulders. $300,000 commission. Not bad for a day's work. Several relatives congratulated her. My aunt hugged her and said something about how proud she was. My uncle patted Kevin on the back and asked about his Tesla. Rachel soaked it all in, that practiced smile plastered on her face. When she finally made her way over to where Lily and I were sitting, she looked me up and down with barely concealed pity. "Emma, hi. You look comfortable," she said, which was her way of saying I looked cheap. "Still doing the interior design thing?" "Yes," I said simply. "Business is good." "That's sweet," Rachel said, in a tone that made it clear she didn't believe me. "You know, if you ever want to make real money, I could introduce you to some agents. We're always looking for stagers. It's not quite design, more like arranging furniture, but the pay is decent." "I'm fine, thank you," I replied. Rachel crouched down to Lily's eye level, something that always annoyed me because it felt performative. "And how's my little cousin? What grade are you in now?" "Second grade," Lily said quietly. She was shy around Rachel, probably because Rachel only saw her a few times a year and always treated her like a prop. "Second grade. Wow. And what do you want to be when you grow up?" "An artist," Lily said. Rachel laughed. "An artist? That's cute. Well, make sure you have a backup plan, sweetie. Artists don't make much money." She stood up and looked at me meaningfully. "Trust me, I know from experience." It was a clear dig at my grandmother, who had been a painter before she retired. I bit my tongue. This was Grandma Helen's birthday party, and I wasn't going to cause a scene. The dinner went smoothly enough. We ate, we toasted my grandmother, we sang happy birthday. Rachel spent most of the meal talking about her recent trip to Paris. About the Michelin star restaurants she had eaten at, about the shopping she had done on the Champs-Élysées. Kevin chimed in occasionally with anecdotes about his work, using tech jargon that nobody really understood but everyone nodded along to anyway. I sat quietly with Lily, making sure she ate her vegetables, helping her cut her chicken. My grandmother, who was sitting at the head of the table, kept looking over at me with a small smile. She barely touched her food, which was unusual for her. After dinner, as we were having coffee and birthday cake, my grandmother stood up. She tapped her wine glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she said. Her voice was strong and clear. 80 years old. I never thought I'd make it this far. Everyone chuckled. "I've been thinking a lot lately about legacy, about what I want to leave behind. And I've made a decision that I want to share with all of you tonight." Rachel perked up immediately. I saw her exchange a glance with Kevin. There was excitement in her eyes. "My beach house," Grandma Helen continued, "has been in my family for 40 years. It's full of memories. It's where I raised my children, where my grandchildren spent their summers. It's special to me. And I've decided that I want to give it to one of my grandchildren while I'm still alive, so I can see them enjoy it." The room buzzed with murmurs. Rachel was practically vibrating with anticipation. She turned to Kevin and whispered something I couldn't hear, but I saw her smile grow wider. "Now, I know some of you might think this is an easy decision," my grandmother said, looking directly at Rachel. "After all, Rachel is very successful. She's made quite a name for herself in real estate. She drives a beautiful car, wears beautiful clothes, lives in a beautiful house." Rachel nodded, sitting up straighter. She was beaming. "But," my grandmother continued, her voice taking on a different tone, "success isn't just about money. It's not about how big your house is or what kind of car you drive or how many designer bags you own." Rachel's smile faltered slightly. "For the past 10 years, my grandmother said, and now she was looking at me, Emma has come to visit me every single Thursday evening. Every single week. She brings her daughter. We cook together, we talk, we laugh. She helps me with things around the house. She listens to my stories, even though she's probably heard them 100 times. She never asks me for anything. She just shows up week after week, because she cares about me. I felt my throat tighten. I hadn't expected this. Rachel, my grandmother said, turning back to my cousin, you're a lovely girl, and I'm proud of what you've accomplished. But you visit me maybe 3 times a year. You stay for an hour, take some photos, and then you're gone. You've never asked me how I'm doing, never offered to help with anything. You're too busy with your important life. Rachel's face had gone pale. Kevin put his hand on her arm, but she shook him off. So I've decided, my grandmother said, her voice firm now, that I'm giving the beach house to Emma. The room erupted. People gasped, whispered to each other. Rachel stood up so fast her chair almost fell over. What? Rachel's voice was shrill. That's not fair. Grandma, Emma can't even afford a house like that. The property taxes alone would bankrupt her. She can barely afford her apartment. Rachel, my aunt said sharply, but Rachel wasn't listening. I'm the one who understands real estate, Rachel continued, her voice getting louder. I'm the one who could actually appreciate that house, maintain it properly. Emma doesn't have the money or the knowledge to take care of a $2 million property. My grandmother's expression didn't change. The house is paid off, Rachel. There's no mortgage. And I've set aside money in a trust to cover property taxes and maintenance for the next 5 years. Emma won't have to worry about that. But why? Rachel demanded. She looked genuinely hurt now beneath all the anger. Why would you give it to her instead of me? Because, my grandmother said quietly, Emma knows that love and family are more valuable than money. You've forgotten that, Rachel. You've become so focused on appearing successful that you've lost sight of what actually matters. Rachel's hands were shaking. This is unbelievable. This is absolutely unbelievable. Come on, Kevin, we're leaving. Rachel, please, my grandmother said. Sit down. Let's talk about this. But Rachel was already grabbing her purse, her face red with humiliation and rage. You know what? Keep your house, Emma. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you can actually afford to live there, because I know you can't. You'll probably have to sell it within a year, and then you'll realize that Grandma should have given it to someone who could actually handle it. She stormed out, Kevin following behind her with an apologetic look on his face. The door slammed, and the room fell into uncomfortable silence. My grandmother sat back down, suddenly looking very tired. I got up and went to her, kneeling beside her chair. Grandma, I whispered, you didn't have to do this. Yes, I did, she said, patting my hand. That house belongs with someone who will love it, not someone who will just see it as another asset. I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. Lily came over and hugged both of us. Around the room, other relatives started coming over to congratulate me, though I could tell some of them were shocked, maybe even disapproving. But I didn't care. My grandmother had given me an incredible gift, and it had nothing to do with the money. It was about being seen, being valued for who I was rather than what I owned. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. My grandmother had her lawyer draw up all the papers, making the transfer official. I went to the beach house several times, walking through the rooms with a mixture of awe and disbelief. It needed some updating, but it was structurally sound and absolutely beautiful. The view of the ocean from the back porch was breathtaking. Rachel didn't contact me at all during this time, but I heard through family members that she was furious. She had apparently called my aunt crying, saying that the whole situation was unfair, that I had manipulated our grandmother, that I was taking advantage of an old woman. But then I heard something else, something that put Rachel's anger into a different perspective. My uncle, who was friends with Kevin's brother, mentioned casually at a family barbecue that Rachel and Kevin were having some financial problems. Something about debt, he said vaguely. I don't know the details, but Kevin seemed stressed about it. I didn't think much of it at the time. Rachel had always seemed so financially secure, so successful. But a few months after I officially moved into the beach house, something happened that made me understand just how deep Rachel's problems actually went. I had decided to turn the beach house into an Airbnb. Not full-time, just occasionally, to help cover expenses and generate some extra income. My grandmother's trust fund covered the property taxes and basic maintenance, but I still had other bills, and Lily's expenses seemed to grow every month. I worked with a property management company that handled the bookings and the cleaning, and I stayed with my mom during the weeks when the house was rented out. The first few months were incredibly successful. The house was charming, well located, and reasonably priced compared to other rentals in Laguna Beach. I was making about $15,000 a month in rental income, minus the management fees and cleaning costs. After expenses, I was clearing about $10,000 a month. It was more money than I had ever made in my life. With this new income, I was able to pay off my credit card debt, buy Lily some new clothes that actually fit her, and start saving for her college fund. I even treated myself to a few things, though I was careful not to overspend. I knew this could all disappear if the market changed or if something happened to the house. One day, about 6 months after I had moved into the beach house, I got a call from Rachel. It was the first time she had contacted me since the birthday party. "Emma," she said, her voice tight and formal. "I need to talk to you about something." "Okay," I said cautiously. "I heard you're renting out the beach house on Airbnb." "Yes, occasionally. It helps with expenses." "That's smart," she said, and there was something in her tone that I couldn't quite identify. "Listen, I know things have been weird between us, but I'm calling to ask for a favor." "What kind of favor?" There was a long pause. "Kevin and I are going through a difficult time financially. We've had some unexpected expenses, and we're a bit behind on some bills. I was wondering if you could loan us some money. Maybe $50,000. Just for a few months until I close some deals and we get back on our feet." I was stunned. $50,000? "Rachel, I don't have that kind of money just lying around. But you're making good money with the Airbnb, right? And you have the house. You could take out a home equity line of credit." "I'm not going to take out a loan on my grandmother's house to give you money," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Besides, you said yourself at the birthday party that I could barely afford my apartment. Why would you think I have $50,000 to loan you now?" "Because you have the house," Rachel said, her voice rising. "You got handed a $2 million property for free, and I got nothing. The least you could do is help family when they're in trouble." "Rachel, what's really going on?" I asked. "You're supposed to be successful. You closed a $300,000 deal just 6 months ago." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, finally, Rachel spoke, and her voice was different, smaller. "That money's gone, Emma. All of it. We owe $800,000. $800,000? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How is that even possible? And then it all came pouring out. The truth about Rachel's perfect life, the reality behind the Instagram photos and the designer clothes and the luxury vacations. Rachel and Kevin had been living on credit for years. The house in Pasadena had a massive mortgage, bigger than they could really afford. The cars were leased, not owned. The vacations were charged to credit cards that were now maxed out. The clothes, the dinners, the whole lifestyle was built on debt. Rachel had been making good commissions. It was true, but she was spending more than she was earning. She convinced herself that as long as she maintained the appearance of success, the actual success would follow. She networked with wealthy clients, joined expensive country clubs, bought luxury items to fit in with the high-end real estate crowd. But it was all a facade. The $300,000 commission from the Malibu deal. Half of it went to taxes. The other half went to paying down credit cards, but they had racked up new charges almost immediately. Kevin's tech job paid well, around $200,000 a year, but they were spending $300,000 a year, sometimes more. They were drowning. "We're about to lose the house," Rachel said, and now she was crying. "The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings. Kevin's family is refusing to help us anymore because we've borrowed from them before and never paid them back. My parents don't have money to give us. You're my last option, Emma. Please." I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me felt sorry for Rachel. She was clearly desperate and scared. But another part of me was angry. She had looked down on me for years, mocked my lifestyle, pitied me for being poor, and now she wanted my help. "Rachel," I said carefully, "I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't give you $50,000. I don't have it, and even if I did, I have my own daughter to think about. I have to build stability for Lily. I can't risk that. So that's it." Rachel's voice turned bitter. "You're just going to let family suffer?" You're not suffering from poverty, Rachel. You're suffering from living beyond your means. That's different. There are things you can do. You can sell the Pasadena house, move into something smaller. You can sell the cars and buy something affordable. You can cut up the credit cards and live on a budget. We've already put the house on the market, she snapped. And even after we sell it, we'll barely break even after paying off the mortgage and the home equity loan. We'll have maybe $50,000 left, if we're lucky. That's not enough to start over. Then you'll have to rebuild, like everyone else does, I said. I'm sorry, Rachel, but this isn't my problem to solve. She hung up on me. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, feeling terrible but also knowing I had made the right decision. Over the next year, I watched Rachel's life fall apart from a distance, mostly through family gossip. The Pasadena house sold, but just barely. They ended up accepting an offer that was $100,000 less than they had hoped for. After paying off the mortgage and the home equity loan, they were left with $30,000. They moved into a small apartment in Riverside, about an hour outside of Los Angeles. The Mercedes was repoed when they couldn't make the lease payments. Kevin's Tesla was sold. Rachel had to leave her high-end real estate agency because she couldn't afford to maintain the appearance expected of agents at that level. She tried to work at a more modest agency, but she had gotten used to the big commissions and she struggled with the smaller sales. Eventually, Rachel stopped working in real estate altogether. She got a job as a property manager for a company that managed vacation rentals. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She was now managing the kind of properties she had once looked down on. But what really shocked the family was when Rachel reached out to me again, a year and a half after our phone conversation about the loan. This time she wasn't asking for money. She was asking for a job. I know this is awkward, she said, her voice flat and defeated. But I heard you're looking for someone to help manage the Airbnb bookings and do some of the cleaning between guests. I'm experienced with property management now, and I need the work. I'm willing to do whatever you need. I was torn. Part of me wanted to say no, to turn her away the way she had turned away from me all those years. But another part of me, the part that had learned from my grandmother, knew that family was complicated and that people deserved second chances. The pay is $18 an hour, I said. It's not glamorous work. You'd be cleaning toilets, changing sheets, restocking supplies. Are you really okay with that? I don't have much choice, Rachel said quietly. So I hired her. It was strange at first, having Rachel work for me. She showed up in yoga pants and an old t-shirt, her hair in a ponytail, no makeup. She looked like a completely different person from the woman who had walked into my grandmother's birthday party in a Chanel suit. She did her work without complaining, though I could tell it killed her pride. She scrubbed bathrooms, vacuumed floors, washed windows. Sometimes guests would leave the house in terrible condition, and Rachel would have to clean up after them without a word. We didn't talk much at first. Our conversations were purely professional, about supplies that needed to be ordered or maintenance issues that needed to be addressed. But slowly, over weeks and months, something shifted. One day we were sitting on the back porch taking a break between cleanings, drinking iced tea and looking out at the ocean. Rachel suddenly said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked, though I knew. "For everything. For treating you the way I did. For looking down on you. For being such a snob about your life when you were actually the one who had it figured out." She stared at her hands. "I was so busy trying to look successful that I forgot to actually be successful. I forgot what mattered." "We all make mistakes," I said. "Not like this," Rachel said. "I destroyed my life, Emma. My marriage is barely holding together. Kevin and I fight constantly about money. We lost everything we thought we had, and the worst part is, it was all fake to begin with. We never really had any of it. We were just pretending." "You can rebuild," I said. "It'll take time, but you can do it." Rachel laughed bitterly. "You know what the worst part is? When I was showing off at Grandma's birthday party, bragging about that $300,000 commission, I was already $600,000 in debt. I was bragging about money that was already spent before I even earned it. And I was looking at you with pity, thinking you were the one who had failed at life. God, I was such an idiot." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the waves crash against the shore. "Grandma knew," I said finally. "She knew you were in trouble. She told me later that she had noticed things, little signs. The way you always changed the subject when anyone asked about specifics. The way Kevin looked stressed. She wanted to give you the house so you'd have something solid, something you couldn't spend or lose. But she knew you'd just see it as another asset to leverage or borrow against. Rachel nodded slowly. She was right. If she had given me the house, the first thing I would have done is take out a home equity loan. I would have used it to pay off credit cards and then max them out again. I would have destroyed it. But you're not that person anymore, I said. I'm trying not to be, Rachel replied. Rachel continued working for me for another year. Slowly, she and Kevin started to rebuild their lives. They paid off their remaining debts bit by bit. They learned to live within their means, to find happiness in simple things rather than in status symbols and appearances. Kevin started working on a side business developing apps, something he had always wanted to do but never had time for when they were busy maintaining their expensive lifestyle. Rachel and I never became close the way we had been as children, but we developed a mutual respect. She had learned humility the hard way, and I had learned that success comes in many forms. My grandmother passed away 2 years after she gave me the beach house. She died peacefully in her sleep, in the same bedroom where she had slept for 40 years. At the funeral, Rachel came up to me with tears in her eyes. I'm glad it was you, she said. I'm glad Grandma gave you the house. You deserved it. You were there for her when I wasn't. You loved her the right way. I hugged her, both of us crying. Now, 5 years after that birthday party, I'm still living in the beach house with Lily, who is now 12 years old. The Airbnb is still successful, bringing in steady income. I've expanded my interior design business, working with more clients and taking on bigger projects. Lily is thriving, doing well in school, making friends, learning to surf. Rachel and Kevin bought a small house in Corona, nothing fancy but theirs, with a mortgage they can actually afford. Rachel eventually went back to real estate, but this time she works with first-time homebuyers and modest properties. She says it's more fulfilling than selling mansions to millionaires. She seems happier now, more genuine. We have family dinners sometimes, Rachel and Kevin, Lily and me. We cook together, laugh together, talk about real things instead of bragging about possessions. Rachel is Lily's favorite babysitter now, which is something I never would have predicted 5 years ago. Sometimes I sit on the back porch of the beach house at sunset, the same porch where my grandmother and I used to sit, and I think about what she taught me. Success isn't about money or status or appearances. It's about love, family, integrity, showing up for the people who matter. It's about building something real instead of something that just looks good from the outside. My grandmother knew that. She knew it all along. And by giving me that house, she didn't just give me financial security. She gave me validation, proof that I had been living my life the right way all along, even when people like Rachel were looking down on me for it. The house is worth close to $3 million now, with the way Laguna Beach real estate has appreciated. But that's not why it matters to me. It matters because it was my grandmother's house, because it's full of memories, because it represents everything she valued. And I will never sell it, no matter how much it's worth, because some things are more valuable than money. That's the lesson my grandmother spent her whole life trying to teach, and thanks to her, I finally understand it completely.